Hey, it's Paul, and we're working on Lego set 75380. This is the Moss Espa Podracing diorama, and it was so much fun to build. I can't wait to do it with you. This is the moment in the film when Anakin decides to take fate into his own hands and take a leap of faith and get into the race, having never won one before, never completed one before, but that risk pays off. It changes his entire life. So as we build, what we're going to bond about today is chatting about how taking risks, although they're dangerous sometimes and can seem scary, can really have huge payoffs. So stick around for that. If you'd prefer to just watch this build happen without the chat, that's fine. There'll be a follow-up video to this, which is just a slow-mo version of all of this coming together. Ready to get started? Let's go. Risk-taking can be terrifying, and the pod race is a good example of that. It's a heart-stopping moment in the films, and there's a lot at stake. But it's a good example of when you can put things out there, when you try, you never know what the rewards could be, and you never know how it can change the path that you're on or the legacy that you leave behind. So as we build, we're going to talk a little bit about what that feels like in real life and how we can remind ourselves of what those payoffs can be. All right. First thing to talk about is whenever there's a situation where you're going to risk something, it's the idea that you're going to fail, you're going to be embarrassed, and you might be in front of other people who know how to do it already, who do it better, whether that's at work or at home or with a group of friends. So that pressure is one particular kind of risk-taking that it's worth talking about because we've all experienced that. It's important to remember what the benefits are to doing that. When Anakin is pod racing, he has those doubts, right? Because everyone else has done it better and done it more often and has actually won, and he's trying something really ostensibly for the first time. So risk is natural. That feeling of risk is really natural, and we have to recognize that for ourselves, that if you're feeling that way, that is a completely normal response. When you're trying something new for the first time, I know that we're focused on ourselves, but one of the greatest outcomes can happen from the people who watch us try things. Qui-Gon, for example, is at the end of this pod race, the fact that Anakin is so determined to try is the thing that makes him truly believe that he is someone worthy of taking further on the journey. And so I know that I've had times in my life when I look back where the people around me who've seen me just make the effort, even if it wasn't successful, have actually been the ones who have helped me continue forward. And it's important to remember that all the time. It's not just about you, it's about the others who want to be there to support you and are excited to watch you try. Another thing that happens when we just get out of our comfort zone is that you can actually reveal hidden potential. So Anakin thought he wanted to do this and felt he could do it, but I don't think he really truly understood until the moment happened in the race where he really knew he had all these instincts about him. And that's a critical thing. But have you had that in your own life as well? I know that I have, where I've done something and I realized I have some kind of ability to do it. I can do it better than I thought I could. I've had times when definitely I thought I could do something and I didn't do it well at all, but you never know until you can try, until you surprise yourself. And that only comes with a certain level of risk, because there's a certain level of reward that comes from feeling like you really tried something and you learned something about yourself. You know, for Anakin in the movie, this is a moment where unknowingly he is leaving his childhood behind because he's taking this risk and succeeding. And, you know, it just makes me think of all the moments, no matter how old you are in life, that you can consciously try something new and have the outcome be that you are moving forward in life. You're actually taking control and changing your life and moving it forward in a way that you maybe don't even know at the time. I know that I've had those moments where I've tried something and something wonderful has happened as a result of it, and I wasn't even expecting that second outcome. I just wanted to try something out. So just always remember that when there's these moments of risk or opportunities to try and do new things and push yourself, that there can be unseen consequences, unseen rewards in the future. You've had it happen to you, so why can't it happen again? So let's not pretend that risk taking doesn't have consequences. You know, in the film, podracing has very real financial implications for Anakin, but also has life threatening and dream ending possibilities for him as well. And, you know, the movie's huge in a fantasy, but in real life, I know that I've been in situations where when I look back on them, I thought they were basically life threatening, my social life maybe, or my job. And really, they weren't. They were just things that happened, but things that happened that really informed who I am. And you've probably had that in your life too. So I want you to keep those moments in life in your mind when you're approaching something new, when you want to take a risk, because we often overblow the consequences. So in the film, yes, these consequences are real and huge, but in real life, we tend to outperform and blow out. No, 3, 2, 1. So in the film, these consequences are huge, but in real life, in our minds, we tend to overblow consequences sometimes, that everything is life or death, and that's not always the case. You can end up trying things and without it being so dire, and you have, so just remember that the next time you want to take a risk. When you look back on risks that you've taken in your life and how they've gone, it almost always comes down to three different things, which is skill and preparation, but also courage. No matter what you're going to face, it's going to feel terrifying. There are going to be those moments, but I want you to remember that the rewards are there for you and that you've done it already in the past, and there's no reason why you can't do it again. And there you have it. The pod racing diorama is complete. This was a lot of fun to build, and I say that about everything that I make, but it's the truth. All of these builds are so much fun. Some things that I especially liked about this model. Number one is the fact that it does have this great shape to it, but it does give this incredible 3D quality to it because the models are actually on these invisible little stands. We've seen them used in other Lego builds before, but I think they're particularly effective in this model. One of the other things that I really like is the fact that it is actually really solid. I didn't expect that, so I thought this might be a little more fragile. It looks fragile, but it's actually really not. It really does hold together. I do especially appreciate the fact that these 25 years of Lego Star Wars bricks are actually attached to this diorama. We've had a couple of models throughout this year where this has just been a separate piece that sits on the side. And just as a collector, as someone who's a fan of Lego and Star Wars together, I like to have everything associated. I think that's great. The last thing is there were a couple of really incredibly clever uses of parts. These snowshoe paddles for part of Anakin's Podracer engine they're really clever. There were minimal amounts of stickers, which I find really great. The instructions on where to place these got a little bit squirrely sometimes. I got a little ahead of myself. I tried to, while I was building one side of this engine, thought I knew what I was doing and built the other one at the same time, and the builds are actually a little bit different. So that is my tip to you if it helps you when you're building it yourself. And if you have this set, you know what I'm talking about. I think it's great that we sort of see these representations of Anakin and Sebulba. Again, it's part of microscale. They didn't really need to include that, but I think it really makes it a lot of fun. And of course, we have our amazing quote at the front. Remember, concentrate on the moment. Feel, don't think. Use your instincts. Isn't that great advice? I really like the fact that you can see how it all fits into this one space. Like a diorama would, but that you've got the Anakin's pod racer hanging off the edge here, which I think gives it a really great sense of dynamicness. Dynamism? Maybe that's the better word. As you look around the back, as we've looked, you see it's actually kind of completed on the back. This reminds me actually of when you're looking at the back of Cars Land, Disneyland in California, but you also have these great angles through the set, which actually makes it even more interesting, I think. All in all, one of my favorite things about doing any of these dioramas is as you build from the ground up, the base itself and the way that's constructed and the kind of depth that is given with very little to work with is always impressive to me. I think it's a great design, great design execution. Small pieces building into something bigger is always really fascinating to me. Personally, I think microscale isn't my absolute favorite thing. I know people love it. I do enjoy building it, but I have my giant hands. Maybe that's part of it. But hey, no risk, no reward, right? And that's what we've learned in this session. So thank you, as always. My favorite part of doing this was doing it with you. For more, please come back and see me. I'd love to build with you again. If you want to see this build, just time-lapse of the build itself without the chat, that video is up next. All right, until next time, you got this.